and welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and the most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and I'm a former chief culture officer and head of people who knows how complicated the simple working day can get. I've seen and heard it all, and from all sides, so truly, no judgments. This is a safe space to explore the confusing, convoluted, or cringy side of office life. So grab your coffee, kick back in your swivel chair, and listen up because Workplace Weirdness is here to give you some much needed perspective. Here's to making the workday a little bit stranger and a whole lot more fun. We've got a lot to get to today. So, this week's Workplace Weirdness questions discuss a big meeting hiccup, an employee crumbling beneath an avalanche of micromanagement, and a mid level manager tasked with the grim job of sharing bad news with a happy face. Today, our friend of Workplace Weirdness is Kavita Vora. Kavita is the Chief People Officer at BrainPOP, the international edtech powerhouse, as well as former CPO with MakerBot and Jopwell. She's also a founder at Kaya Ventures, providing angel investing and executive coaching for businesses. And when I felt it was my time to sort of lean out of my role at BrainPOP as Chief Culture Officer, we went through this very rigorous process to find the perfect person to lead the company's people team, and Kavita was the obvious choice. She was such a natural successor that we became fast friends. And so it was obvious that Kavita, I'd want to have you on my podcast. So welcome. And we're really delighted to have you visit here at Workplace Weirdness.
I'm so happy to be here. Excited to catch up.
I'm curious to hear from you before we dig into the listener questions. So, what was your weirdest workplace moment?
So many weird workplace moments, but one that always makes me laugh. So I actually transitioned my career from finance to HR. And when I got my first role in HR, it was my first time having a private office. I got there and the office manager told me, your office is down the hall. It's like right at the end. Just follow this hallway. So I thought, great, beautiful office, huge windows, wall to or floor to ceiling windows, gorgeous. I sat down, I started unpacking my bag and realized I was in the CEO's office, not my office, which was actually two doors down and about a third of the size. But it was definitely a funny moment and helped my CEO when he walked in and saw me there and told me it was a bonding moment that we had and always still laugh about.
That's hysterical and way to manifest your future, though,
Yeah. What about
That's
yours,
great.
Maya?
My weirdest workplace moment. Well, I don't know if it's the weirdest, but one of the ones that come to mind. So we were in this big town hall meeting, and the CEO is talking to 150 to 200 people, and somebody messages me the Zoom window. And this was before, how like now in the Zoom window, it's like you're only messaging this person, make sure that you know exactly who you're messaging. Well, whatever. It wasn't exactly like that, or it wasn't as sophisticated. And long story short, I'm like messaging somebody, and I accidentally sent it to everybody. And it was just this moment where I froze because here I am, an executive at the company, and I shouldn't be texting probably on the side and whatever. And the funny part was that the CEO, he was just trying to be like a huge supporter of me. So he somehow worked it into the conversation. Like he didn't understand. He's like, yeah, I can see how whatever, how traveling to Bali is like really important right now. I don't know, whatever. He like made it work. And it was just very funny. And I was turning all shades of red. And it was okay. I learned my lesson. Never going to do that again. I now have a very strict rule that I only text on my phone, like in a different medium outside of Zoom. So that's the way
But
I
I
learned
think
that
there
one.
is a connection between the two. So both of us had these incidents where our CEO saw us have an embarrassing moment, but they both used laughter, right? And made it a little bit lighter and a little more comfortable. So I think that's a good lesson for
Yeah,
our
and
listeners.
it was fine. It was honestly, it wasn't even something I wanted to ever acknowledge, but I'm happy that you're, that just talking about it is bringing it up, and it happens, right? These things happen. So let's just talk about you a little bit. So I want to hear, what did you want to do when you grow up? How did you stumble into the people, culture, HR space?
Great question. So I actually went in my undergrad, I decided I wanted to study philosophy. Interestingly, there are not a lot of jobs out there for philosophers these days. So I took a second major, which was finance. And the thing I was really interested in was I was always interested in mission driven companies. So my senior thesis for finance and philosophy, because I had to do two for two majors, One was on Our Corporation's Moral Agents, and the other one was on Can socially responsible companies be as profitable or more profitable than others? And I kind of combined the two in my career, where I always looked for companies where I felt that they were doing good in the world and had a social impact, on top of also having great business results. So that's how I started my career in the finance field, and I was at Fortune 25 companies. So I spent about 5 years at Johnson and Johnson, really learning the craft of finance. And then when I decided to go back to school for my MBA, and I thought about, as my role in finance, we're allocating budgets, we're deciding bonus structures, but are the right people in leadership making these decisions, leading the company or not? And that to me was the connection to say, what is the company's strategy? What are the organizational structures? And what incentives are we putting in place? And HR was really behind that type of work. So that was my transition to go from finance to HR. And I haven't looked back since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No,
So,
it's
so
great. You
then,
you brought the human piece to like the finance,
exactly, exactly.
thinking.
And for
I
me, it
love
was
it.
important to really learn the craft. So I went to another larger company where I could really learn from experts. So spent about 5 years at HP working with really amazing managers and leaders. But then I wanted to, I was in Silicon Valley for about 10 years. Everybody worked at a tech startup. I was excited and wanted to see what it was about. So I did then transition into a series of CHRO roles for a tech startup. So that's been a really exciting sort of third stage of my career. So it was finance, big HR, let's say, and now tech startup HR.
And is this at all what you thought you were gonna be doing when you grew up? Like, what did you wanna do when you were a little kid?
Oh, absolutely not. I think I wanted to be an ice cream vendor on the beach. I'm such an outdoor person that I thought that just seemed like the dream job, to be able to see the sunset every day, eat as much ice cream as you want. What could be better?
I think that you're onto something, honestly. Maybe in retirement, that could be your goal, you know? I love it.
Definitely.
It's kind of funny because, I also had a beach related, like when I was little, I mean, I wanted to do all kinds of things, but one thought I had was like, I should sell jewelry on the beach. That would be like the most fun because I get to make the art and then I get to
Mhm.
like be on the beach. So we have the beach thing in common,
So I
basically.
think we have figured out our next joint venture.
Yeah, I think so. Good call. Um, all right. Well, let me just bring it back to HR, I guess, for a second. But so in the, you just talked about how like you went through this really interesting change from finance to HR and people and culture. What HR skills sort of came easy to you, and which ones took more time and intention to develop?
I was actually surprised at how connected finance and HR were. So things like headcount reporting, I thought after finance I could leave it behind. No, so all of these things are really two sides of the same coin. When it came to compensation or data analytics, a lot of it was very tied together with skills that I developed in my finance career. I would say the part that came less naturally was having patience. So
Mm,
really, I'm probably more of a talker than a listener. And so I think really trying intentionally to hone my listening skills and to have patience as people tell their story the way they want to tell it versus kind of rushing through to get to the point that I think they're trying to make. So that's something that I'm still working on today.
wonderful. And, amazing. Like, I think it's like takes a lot of self awareness to get to the point of understanding that that's what you know, want to develop and want to lean into. Great. Okay. So now, thank you so much, by the way, for sort of giving us a little bit of input, into where you're sort of coming from and how you've developed through your career. But now I want to switch to a section that we call the week in work, a weekly section where we discuss a news story that could affect how we work. So, and I think you're aware of this, Kavita,
Mhm.
probably. So, Amazon has announced that all office workers must be in the building 5 days a week starting in January. They state that it benefits relationships and the company. And then in a London Times piece, it was said that work from home is actually harmful to employees in their 20s because it like isolates them. And then another article was that in Forbes that noted that 71% of remote workers said remote work helps them balance work and personal life. Interestingly, more men work remotely than women, and more people with advanced degrees work remotely than those without college degrees. So that's a lot of info, but what's your take on this?
It is definitely a hot topic. And I actually spent this last week at an HR conference called CPO HQ, which is about 200 CHROs that all got together to discuss topics like this. This was the hot topic of the day, I would say. I think there's so much nuance to it. It really depends on the business and why people are coming together and for what intention. So I personally, I think hybrid is here to stay. I think that we will see extremes where people go 100% remote or 100%, 5 days a week in the office. But I think we've proven during the pandemic that people can work remotely and be productive, but people also do need some time in person to collaborate, create connections, solve hard problems, build trust. So I personally think hybrid is the way to go because I do agree that 100% remote can be really difficult. It can be isolating. It can make people feel less connected. It doesn't mean it always is. I've seen companies that can operate 100% remotely and they were built that way. They were very intentional about it. But I think for the majority of companies, some in person connection is really important to build those relationships and trust. But some remote, some hybrid is important because first, that's what employees want. They want that flexibility. So to be a competitive employer and not provide that flexibility is going to make it a lot harder to get the best talent in the marketplace. Two, I think people need a combination of in person time and collaborative talking time, but also some time for deep reflection and deep thinking and solo time to just do their work. And the feedback I always get about the modern office is that the way the layouts are, everybody's on top of each other. It's very loud. It's hard to really focus and get, that deep thinking work done. So some time where you can be alone, and whether that's in your home, somewhere else, I think is important to get that critical thinking work done. Otherwise, you're just in meetings and sort of just doing actions, but don't have that time for critical thinking. And then finally, I think that a mandate to be in the office 5 days a week, it does disadvantage certain populations more than others. So something we talked about is folks that make a higher salary sometimes can live closer to the office, and folks that make a lower salary may need to live in a different location that's more affordable. So there are some disparities that, will create more hardship whether it's longer commutes, childcare responsibilities for some populations over others.
Wow. You know what? I didn't even realize that. That's actually really eye-opening. As far as you're absolutely right. Obviously when you make more money, you can be closer to urban centers and can afford that way of living in a different way. So yeah, that's a good point. Me, myself, just FYI, like I've been remote since COVID and of course I've been sort of on this solopreneur journey, as you're aware of, but it has been so funny because I am now at a stage where I crave the office. Like I would love to go to an office. I wish I had people around me, but I totally understand. Like I think that you're kind of spot on that like you can't kind of go to extremes, or it depends on which industry. Of course, if you're
Mhm.
doing work that needs to be done, you know, like at a sort of factory or something like that,
Mhm.
there's no way to do that from remote. But
Mhm.
if you are doing thinking work, I agree that having the sort of different kind of environments is really helpful. Having time built in to do focus work, really really helpful. And the only other thing I would say is that sometimes that work from home space needs to have like really really defined boundaries. Like where I'm struggling with right now is because I've been working from home so long. Like, used to be my children respected that, like, you don't come into the office while mom's working. Well, guess what? Like that, over 3, 4 years, that broke down already. Like they don't, so I now go to a different place to work and I try to highlight like this is my work time. Don't expect a phone call back during this time. It's really it presents its own challenges that I think
Mhm.
that, maybe people haven't, like that it's just more challenging than you might think. So anyway, it's interesting. And so I think that, when you're working to strengthen that hybrid culture, it might be good to also remind people how to do the work from home piece in a way that is, useful and productive. So
Mhm.
that's my take on it. What about, I mean, are you feeling like I mean, do you right now you guys do hybrid, right? You come into the
Yeah.
office part of the week?
Right now we're hybrid, but we don't have mandatory requirements to come into the office. We've done it more through encouraging and explaining the reasons why we want people to come into the office a few days a week, and just to build communities, have team meetings. What we even encourage people, if they are co-located in the same office, to do one-on-ones in person or have team meetings in person. We do throw in a free lunch as well as an extra little perk to encourage people to come in on the same day. The other feedback we got was when people come in on all different days and it's random, then when you come in and there aren't enough people in the office, it feels like it's not worth it. So we've done some work around intentional community days where we really encourage people to come in. But I think it has its challenges, right? I think when you say we're encouraging it, but not requiring it, you're not going to get like full office participation. So I think that is something we're struggling with and trying to figure out for the next year. So articles like the Amazon one is definitely making us think more about our hybrid approach and philosophy, and wanting to just reach out to other companies to see how do you get folks in the office in a way that they want to be in the office versus a mandatory policy, which is what a lot of companies are doing. And I'll just
Right.
add that with the Amazon article, the other part I thought was interesting is it seems like they're already expecting and maybe desiring a percentage of employees to not want to work in that environment and to leave. So the other thing that's being said in the HR circles is that is this really about 5 days a week or just a way to get a certain percentage of employees to opt out without paying severance packages because they're choosing to quit versus having a layoff. So it's another interesting angle.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. Okay. Sounds like, what I would maybe break it down to is, they have this feeling that that's what makes their culture strong. So they're just saying like either join us and do it our way or bye. And sometimes, that shows a very strong-willed kind of company. And I'm sure
Mhm.
that in some ways that turns off a lot of strong applicants. And they're doing well though as a company, so I guess they don't have to worry too hard about if this is going to affect their profit margin or something like that. But just interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks for that perspective. I really think it's important to also like just to repeat some of what I heard. I mean, I really love some of the ideas that you guys have been doing around community days and making sure that people, if they're coming in, that it's like worth their while. And so
Right.
that I think causes a lot of intrinsic motivation to obviously come into the office. So awesome on that. Great. So now, Kavita, let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we have listener questions for you about big meeting hiccups, wrangling a weapons grade micromanager, and the mid management pinch of delivering bad news from above. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. I'm here with BrainPOP's Chief People Officer, Kavita Vora, to answer the first of our listener questions today. Are you ready, Kavita?
Ready.
Okay, let's start weird with an Olympic level micromanager. Okay, so I'm going to read the question. I'm dealing with a manager who seems to micromanage everything, and it's really frustrating. For instance, he schedules daily check ins in the morning and then follows up a few hours later asking for updates on what I've done. He insists on joining meetings that don't seem necessary and calls me out if I use my phone or look away during these meetings. He even criticized me for not paying attention because I wasn't always looking directly at the screen. When I provide feedback on tasks, he makes me feel inadequate, leading me to just agree with everything to avoid conflict. He also complains about the need for accountability and ownership, but then demands to be copied on every email and micromanages every detail, even instructing me on how to respond to others. This kind of micromanagement is exhausting. How can I address this issue and handle a manager who confuses authority with real leadership?
Well, I definitely
Okay.
have, yeah, empathy for the listener. That does not sound like a fun environment to be in, and definitely something where you want to work to change that dynamic with your manager. I like what I see in this, and I'm coming from an HR angle. So, having worked as an HR business partner with employees and managers having these issues, I'm going to go at it from both sides. So, from looking at it, I would say it seems like there's some trust issues that are there that might be causing the manager to lean in so much. So if for the listener, I would say really think about like what has anything happened that would lead to this condition. So have there been deadlines that were missed? Are there details that might have been discussed in a meeting that didn't get captured or didn't get implemented correctly. I would also think about, do they manage everyone on the team this way or just you? So is it that this is just the manager's style? And I'm not excusing that, but that's a different, that's maybe like 360 feedback for the manager on how they can improve. Or is it
Right.
specific to you and your dynamic? Because then that gets more to the, is there a root cause issue that we can solve? But I've actually found having those open conversations with the manager can be helpful to say, I know that there's something you're looking for that maybe I'm not providing. So let's just talk about it. What is it? What does ideal look like for you? And and then also, how can I proactively kind of own the narrative of giving you updates, but in a way that feels good that I'm owning that. So something I found helpful is then just setting up some kind of board. It could be Asana or Trello, where you're like, what are like the 3 to 5 most important things I'm supposed to be working on? And I'll just put daily status updates on it. So the manager can go in and look at it, once a day. They get an update. I'm giving an update, but without feeling like they're asking me all the time for these updates. So, and then it also even has helped me. I've done that myself, and it keeps me on track of what are my priorities and do I need to align with anything on my manager, or do I need something from them? Maybe they're the blocker and I need something and I can mark it on my board. So that's one way I think like it could be a win-win where the manager gets what they want in terms of updates, but where it's actually work that's going to help you stay organized as well.
Because I think that you said a lot of great things. But basically, I'm agreeing with you that I think that this manager may be a manager that is, I mean, could be that that this person is a new manager and thinks that that's what, that's what it takes to be a manager is to check in constantly. But, a little bit of managing up. In other words, like you called it owning your narrative. I call it a little bit of managing up and saying,
Hmm.
listen, if you're going to ask me I mean, maybe you would say it more politely than the way I'm going to say it right now, but if you're going to ask me every 5 minutes what I'm doing, I can't get anything done. So why don't we set up a check-in system where, let's say, once a week, we can meet, but rely on like asynchronous updates, through even a doc, like a document or a spreadsheet or something like that. If you don't want to go out and get the fancy Trello or or Asana or whatever it is. But I think that that's part of what this person can do, what this listener can do to sort of manage their situation. And I loved your call out. If you're the only one being treated this way, that is a red flag. Like that might mean that there is an issue there that's beyond, the regular day to day. And I would say, look into that and really perceive if you're being mistreated. If so, that could be somebody that maybe you talk about, with maybe somebody in HR, or
Hmm.
or try to figure out how to extricate yourself from that kind of situation. Also, the flip side, which I think maybe you were trying to get to, is this person, is the listener new to their role? Is they like, how long have they been in that role? And maybe they still are in the learning process, in which case it kind of does make sense that the person might micromanage a little bit. There is a point though where every manager should be letting go, should be saying, okay, I've taught you. Now you need to do it. It's a little bit like giving them wings and letting them, fly. And through that experience, trust is earned on both sides, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's where it's hitting me. Anything else you want to add?
I guess the final point I would add is I would ask the listener, do you enjoy this type of work? Because some work is more high level, some work is more detail oriented, right? Some projects are more multi-month projects where other roles are you might work at a call center where every 4 minutes you have to finish a call, right? So what type of environment and job is this? Maybe it is the kind of job where every hour, every minute, you're supposed to have something done, like working in a call center, or maybe you realize like that's not the type of environment you want to be in. And there could be other roles that are more long-term goal oriented, where you have longer deadlines, longer stretches to get things done. So just is this type of a every couple times a day checking up environment, is it because of the role requirements as well? And is that
Right.
the role the right that you want to be in, or do you want to be in a different role?
What do you think about the fact that the listener is being asked to show their face on camera? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it seems so. First, like, I do think there's a time for on camera and a time that you don't need to be on camera. I don't think you always have to be on camera. But the fact that the manager is asking for it, again, I think it could come to this root cause of maybe deadlines or details were missed in the past. And so the manager like wanting you to be on camera and asking you to take notes or being upset if you're not paying attention, like, was there big details that were missed in the past that caused an issue, right? That caused something that maybe then the manager had to go and fix later. So if it all comes down to they want to make sure you're paying attention, a way to show you're paying attention could just be sending a recap after the meeting of like what are the key takeaways. And then it's less important about whether you're on camera or not or taking notes or not. But at the end, you're sharing a debrief of what are the key takeaways and actions, which is probably all the manager really wants in the end.
Right. Right. They want like affirmation that you're semi-engaged.
Yes. Yeah. What do you think, Maya,
Okay,
though?
well,
Because I know there's a lot, especially, at times that we
it's
were
a
fully
tough one. It's a
remote,
tough one for
the
me.
Zoom
Yeah.
screen burnout was a really big topic.
Yes, it was, it was, I remember that, and, like, the big thing is that sometimes I like to just sort of encourage people, like, that if they feel comfortable, please get on screen for a little bit, even, like, for 2 like, sometimes we would do, like, weekly, meetings, and I would say, "I realize that it's early in the morning and people don't always wanna show yourselves on the screen, but if you even just show yourself for, like, 2 minutes just so we can see your face, it'll,
Mhm.
like" this was at a time when we weren't even going to the office, so it really was this feeling of, like, this is my only time to, like, connect with some of these faces, and I'd love to see them. But I also completely, respect that some people are like, they're just like not in a situation where they want to show their face or, maybe they're taking the meeting from a walk or from something that's
Mhm.
like not, that they want to save from the camera's eye. So I don't know. I'm certainly in the middle of this, and I had a time when I was always on camera, and I can tell you that it was exhausting.
It
So
is. It's
I
draining.
try to not do that as
Mhm.
often, now, and I just sort of, I kinda shrug my shoulders and say, "It's okay, like, I know that I need to be off camera right now." But when I can, I try to, to opt into it when I especially haven't seen the people in the meeting for a while. Yeah, there's benefits to both. Anyway, all right, so let's move on to the next question. Thank you so much, Kavita, that was really great, and I really hope that now that we, like, maybe help this listener out and, maybe they can now go back to their manager with a little bit of the structure that they need to have a little bit more agency in this
Yeah.
situation.
Well, and just to add a personal note on the Zoom question, I would say even for you and I, when we have our catch-ups, it's probably 50-50 Zoom versus phone call. So I think it's
I
also just finding those people that you can have those conversations with and what are those topics where you're like, let's do a walk and talk and
Yeah,
proactively
you
just
don't see me,
suggesting
but
them.
I am nodding. I am, like, really nodding. No, because like, exactly, like, I love that we found that out about each other,
Yeah.
and early on in our sort of relationship, we're like, "Can we do a walk and talk?" And, like it gives you, like, just, it gives the context for why you
Yeah.
might be huffing and puffing, midway through the
Exactly.
conversation. But I also think that, thoughts flow differently when we have to
Mhm.
look at people versus when we're sometimes just more using our auditory skills
Mhm.
and our brain in a different way. So I definitely think that that's part of it. So yeah, good call there. So let's move on to the next listener question. Our next listener question is the stuff of mid management nightmares, delivering bad news with a smile, or at least without emanating doomsday vibes. Okay, and here is the question. I'm feeling deeply unsettled at my company right now. We've recently faced a significant financial squeeze leading to layoffs and now a major reduction in hours. Starting next month, the company is cutting everyone on my team's work week from 40 to 30 hours, which also means a decrease in our paychecks. As a team lead who has been with the company for a while, I'm feeling completely caught off guard, especially since I did not get any advance notice. What's bothering me the most is that this feels like a move to improve the company's financials and stock performance rather than addressing the real issues. I'm frustrated because the impact on senior executives will be minimal, while this will severely affect the pay and stability of my team members. I've been given some vague guidance on how to communicate these changes to the team, but I just can't keep my morale up when I'm feeling so disillusioned myself. How can I effectively convey this news to my colleagues while managing my own sense of betrayal? I would appreciate any advice on how to manage through this difficult time.
There's a lot
Okay.
there. So
Yeah.
that's definitely difficult. I think whenever you're impacting people's paychecks, it's difficult. That's the hardest thing that decision you ever have to make as a board or an executive team. I think that it's hard, and I think the listener should definitely feel okay that this is going to be challenging, and if they're feeling it's difficult, their team is probably feeling it difficult, and it is hard to lead through these moments. So just know, give yourself a little bit of grace with the fact that it's hard, and you're probably not no one knows exactly how to navigate these things.
Right.
But I would think about like what first step. There's a lot of assumptions that we all make about senior leadership decisions. So, if I look at a company deciding to move people from 40 hours to 30, my guess is there's probably a decision about we either have to cut, 20% of our workforce or reduce hours or do something else. And like which of the options do will create the least pain for our company, right? And so if a decision is made like this, it maybe just to give the benefit of the doubt, it was to avoid like an actual layoff of people losing their entire jobs, right? So there could be something there that where there was an intention around like what will cause the least pain for employees.
That's really, really smart, actually. I wouldn't have jumped to think that. So that's a good call out there. You're right.
Yeah, usually there's a number they're trying to hit, and the listener's right. They said this is a move to improve the financials and stock performance. Absolutely. This is usually why these things happen. There's also things behind the scenes you may not know. So senior leadership may have also taken a pay cut. Like there could be other things that senior leadership has done. I'm not saying they have, but I've been in that back of the room where senior leaders have said, we're the first ones that are going to do this, or we'll even take a deeper cut than others. So that has happened.
Right.
And it could happen or it could not, but it's a possibility. I think that thinking about what's in your control and what's not in your control is really important. And, still thinking about like, what are you still gaining skills every day that you feel are transferable? So, are you contributing and feeling like you're making an impact every day? That's within your control. What happens next about are there more cuts or are there other things that are going to happen may not be completely in your control. So I would say like what's in your sphere of control and meeting with your team and trying to help them through the process and leading with empathy, acknowledging that this is hard for, you're finding this hard, you're sure they're finding it hard. It might just create some more trust with them that you're not there's that fine line of wanting to support the company decision as a team leader, but also acknowledging personally it's also difficult for you. So I think it's finding that right balance. What do you think, Maya?
Exactly. It's about, I mean, so the person asks, how do I effectively communicate with my team? So exactly. The first thing I would say, and I completely agree with you, is first you have to manage your own feelings. Like first have a conversation with yourself, kind of. And I guess that's what this question is coming from. It's like, how do I do this? But this is something that most leaders have to go through in some form or another. And that's the true test of being a leader, if you ask me too. It's like I have to like deliver hard news while it also may affect myself. Of course, if you can communicate your sort of struggle with it, it makes you sound more human and it makes you be able to tell that story, I think, in a more convincing way.
Mhm.
And I do think that, again, putting into question the idea that like this might have been a hard decision on the company's side, but at least they're trying to retain the jobs rather than eliminate jobs is like a
Mhm.
very effective piece of telling the story. And I would also draw the line at, like you said, like it's like a fine balance. You draw the line at saying anything negative about the company. Don't make it like it's like your team versus the company. That would be not the right
Mhm.
approach. Stay respectful. And what I hope for you, dear listener, is that after the sort of difficult period happens, if you want to advocate for your team in a sort of more private way, I think that's where you can sort of really effectively showcase like how you manage and how you lead,
Mhm.
and try to figure out. And it's true. I think that you're right that management should have communicated better, but they didn't for whatever reason they had. But you could definitely have a conversation and say, if this has to happen again, or if this is happening, I would like to have a lot more lead time to understand how we can either rectify it or how I can change things, et cetera. And I think that will allow your growth within the company and within your leadership role. So
And
that's
I
my
think
take
that
on it.
there's one phrase in there I don't want to step over, which is the where they say we're not addressing the root causes or the real issues. Sorry, addressing the real issues, and that's very interesting to me. So I am curious if at this listener's company they have an employee survey where where employees feel that they're able to really share what the real issues are, right? Because it sounds like there's some financial struggles, which is why this decision was made. But there could be really valuable employee input that or insights that employees have around how to fix the root issues that are causing the financial challenges. So it feels like that like this is a bit of a band-aid that we're putting on, but what are the root cause issues? And maybe there's an opportunity for the team lead to talk to their managed department executive to say, can the company share, like, what are we doing to address the real root cause issues around business performance? So it doesn't just become like death by a thousand cuts. And whether there's an employee survey where employees feel safe to share their real feedback, or if you have a good relationship with your department leader and can just share it directly, that's even better. But I would really encourage, encourage if you know what that real issue is, share what that is, because like leadership may not be aware, and there's a lot of great insights and nuggets that can come from employees like you.
Amen. Amen. I completely concur. Thanks, Kavita. So I'm going to move on to the next segment, but I just want to say that I really hope that we've helped, these listeners sort of guide them through their difficult spots. And listen, some of this stuff, as we call it, office, like workplace weirdness, but the truth is that some of it can be really tough. So, I just want to acknowledge that and. Good luck, listener. I hope that you're able to navigate out of this situation well. So let's move on to the next segment. This is called the mini weirdness. So why? I have no idea. No, I'm kidding. It's because we need a little levity in our life. We need to have also the fun stuff to laugh at. So this listener calls in with, something that's just a little bit more fun. So every episode, we're going to cover one small workplace weirdness question that focuses on the kind of small slip up or semi faceplant that can send you under your work desk for a day. So here we go. Without further ado, today's mini weirdness is something that could happen to any of us. Dear Workplace Weirdness, I was in the middle of a company presentation with clients, silently battling a case of hiccups when my manager, who was presenting, pointed at me for a comment. As I opened my mouth to speak, the loudest hiccup slash burp came out instead. I froze and eventually fumbled to say something. Everyone pretended that nothing happened, but I know that they all heard it. Now I'm stuck wondering, do I address it with my boss and apologize or just let it go? I don't want to come off as unprofessional, but I have no idea how to even bring it up. What should I do? So please help, Kavita. What do you think we should do?
I'm a big fan of humor, so I feel like I would feel awkward unless I at least just acknowledge it a little bit. So I think I would say something like, "Well, after that initial hiccup, I think the meeting went really well," and just make a joke of it. But then move on to business topics of like, here are the three key takeaways I had from the meeting. What do you think? And just like change the topic to business. How would you handle it, Maya?
I love that because first of all, I mean, whoa, that's like being really fast on your feet. Like I wouldn't be able to think of that joke, like I'll be honest with you, but that is a really smart move if you're able to kind of come up with it. In fact, even better if you're able to come up with that in the meeting, like that would have been the
Yeah.
best scenario. I was like, oh, excuse me for, whatever, after that initial hiccup or whatever, you could even say it in front of everybody. But long story short, I probably would acknowledge it, but I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. So I think we're sort of in agreement there. But I love your added level of adding some humor to it. I think that's good. It's a way to sort of laugh it off. And, I think everybody's been through something. So it's better to just, like move on quickly and
Agree.
not let it like ruin your day or your week or your month. It's kind of like, I don't do you watch Ted Lasso ever? He's
Yeah.
always like, like be like a goldfish. Like, okay, just like sometimes we mess up. We need to just like let it go, forget it and
Mhm.
move on. Is there any way to like parlay this experience into like a positive, do you think?
This
What do
one
you think?
specifically, I think would be tough to, turn into
Okay.
a positive. But yeah, I have definitely, had, I think the moments of when there's an embarrassing moment and you're vulnerable about it, like it does help you. It makes you look more human. It makes people feel like empathy towards you. That oh, that's so embarrassing. I feel bad that that happened for them, but it makes them feel more connected to you as a human as well. So I think that when
Exactly.
these embarrassing moments happen, it does maybe connect you more on a humanity level, and building that trust is always important. That definitely I think is the benefit of being human and having these workplace weirdness moments and even sharing
And it's
them.
always really important also to laugh at yourself,
Yeah,
that's, like, another aspect of it, like, if you can laugh at yourself, then people will feel comfortable to just, like to be themselves around you, I think, and I think
exactly.
that's, like, a huge relationship building piece, so and if you wanna know, I'm gonna get, like, meta for a second, but, the whole idea of, like, a show like this is I do hope that we can highlight some things where people are more vulnerable and everybody, no matter who they are, the biggest CEO of the biggest company, they've all had an embarrassing moment. They've all had more than one embarrassing moment, and sometimes it could be high stakes embarrassing moments too. So we just have to acknowledge that that's kind of part of the journey.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really, really key to kind of understanding and having empathy for others. So speaking of empathy, I'm going to say thank you, Kavita, for sharing your empathy and your expertise with us today. It has been a true pleasure, and like really like what nice insights you have that I just love this because I certainly I have my thoughts, but always hearing from another person, it just like it always opens my eyes, so I really, really appreciate it.
This is so much
Thank
fun.
you.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I'll your people will talk to my people. Anyway, we'll be back soon with more workplace weirdness. If you've enjoyed our dive into the strange and funny side of office life, don't forget to subscribe. And if you've got some weirdness in the workplace, drop us an email at info@workplace-weirdness.com or leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/workplace weirdness. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. Until next time, this is Maya Kadar Kovalsky reminding you to embrace the quirks and to make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show was produced by me, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell. Thanks to Billy Salibi, Sam Davidson, and the rest of the team at Podify who helped ideate and engineer this episode. Thanks also to Kavita Vora for joining us on today's episode. And thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.